What up, super friends? Isela here. No rapping for me. Last time I tried that, I got strangely misogynistic. Sorry, getting off topic. In response to the really kind people who've reached out asking how they can support us, we've set up a Patreon. We're so legit now. One might say we're too legit to quit. We know subscriptions are sucky, but we've made it super easy to sign up. And best of all, it is dirt cheap, y'all. Only $2 a month. You can't even buy a single Savage Smoked Slim Jim for that money. For $2, you'll get our episodes a week early and ad-free. Also, we're going to send you some fun and cool stickers a few times a year, along with a shout out during one of our episodes. You will be known to us as the most super of our super friends. Link is in the show notes, or check us out on patreon.com/technicallyaconversation. In 1992, high school students and staff from an El Paso, Texas high school were being constantly harassed by U.S. Border Patrol. Agents were aggressively yelling at them, demanding to prove their citizenship. One lady was knocked to the ground and kicked 20 times by agents. The abuse could no longer be tolerated, so several students, these alums, and some staff decided to sue the U.S. Border Patrol. Come root for the underdog and get all the details next on Technically a Conversation. Greetings, super friends. Welcome to another episode of Technically a Conversation. Here, we like to share an interesting topic or story with each other, which we've recently learned, and hope you find it interesting too. I'm one half of your host today, Isela. Joining me, as always, is the semi-Swifty, Jose. How are you?
I'm doing great. How about yourself?
I'm good.
I would not call myself a Swiftie at all, though.
I know. I was just kidding. See, I can be sarcastic too. I scoured the internet. I didn't find anything new, but it's also because I think that's not part of my algorithm. And I will tell you, though, I'm pretty sure there's some stuff out there because since the last time you and I talked and recorded, she dropped a new album. So I would imagine all of those rumors are running wild, like, if you play her album backwards, it's going to give you all the Illuminati invitees or members.
I haven't heard anything about that. The only thing that I heard was that there were a couple of diss tracks on there, I guess, of like ex-boyfriends. But you know how, she's pretty much infamous at this point for doing that.
I wouldn't call them diss tracks. Like, she definitely talks about how much she really enjoyed going to London. And so, I think it was even called, the title was called like So Long London or something like that. I want to say most artists sing about breakups. Oh my God, Fiona Apple. I mean, homegirl's crazy about that. John Mayer even, like fucking everybody. You know what I mean? Like, it's not just her. It's not something exclusive to her.
Yeah, you and I listen to different artists because the artists I listen to usually talk about magic and fucking bullshit. So
yeah, which is why it surprises me that you haven't watched like Harry Potter or what's the other one that was like a Harry Potter?
Lord of the Rings?
Yes, thank you. That one with all the wizards and I don't want to say mythology, but like, I don't know, some weird stuff. Clearly, I haven't watched it.
Well, I did watch the first Harry Potter and I thought it was better than the first Lord of the Rings. I actually could not stay awake no matter how many times I tried watching Lord of the Rings.
Okay.
But I am also not a huge fantasy person. That's why I could never get into, which one was the other one that everybody loved? The Game of Thrones?
Oh, yeah.
No matter what, I couldn't get into it.
Okay, so you don't like fantasy, but you like magic. Doesn't that fall into the other?
No, well, I like the occult just because it's mysterious and dark and all that stuff.
I'm with you now. Okay, like a different kind of magic, like almost black magic.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm with you now. Okay.
And that's actually going to play in to my episode a little bit.
Ooh.
But I'm not going to spoil it.
All right. Well, let's dive on into this one for now. But I'm excited about yours.
But at the same time, that's why, I guess just to finish this thought, that's the reason I don't pay attention to a lot of song lyrics, just because a lot of the music I listen to, they talk about stuff that does not interest me. The music is amazing, but just the lyrics I can't get into. So that's why I just turned that part of my brain off.
Yeah. I remember that being very apparent one of the first times you showed me some songs. And I'm sure it was during like our movie marathons and stuff like that. And I was like musically, it's so good. It's so intricate and complex. And I'm like, but I don't understand what they're saying. But anyway, for a different topic, I'm sure, another time. Here's a question for you. Did you ever want to live in another city? If so, where?
I did. I hadn't finalized on where I wanted to live, but at the time I was thinking about going to Phoenix. One, because they had a big metal scene, and that was during the time that I was still playing and still wanted to do music. And second, I had an uncle that lived there. So I said, you know what, at least I won't be all by myself. So that was my reasoning behind it.
Yeah. And Phoenix is actually a really cool city. I like it. I mean,
it's really hot, not cold.
Yeah, that's exactly where I was going. That's funny.
What about you?
I mean, I loved living up east in New York City. It was just too expensive. And I was like, what am I doing here? It's so cold. Like, it was so cold. I was like, I am a desert baby. Like, I got to go, like good game. But living on the border, I think it has a lot of advantages. Like, I think personally, El Paso has the best Mexican food. Do you have any other advantages you can think of?
Yeah, I mean, I haven't visited or gone to as many places as you have, but I think the people here in El Paso are probably the friendliest people that I've ever encountered.
Yeah. That was actually in my script as well, saying that for the most part, the people are so warm and friendly.
Yeah, for sure. And I think just being bicultural, I think you get the best of both worlds. So that's something that I do enjoy also. That's why a lot of the episodes we focused a lot on mythology, because there's a lot of Mexican mythology, and it's something that people that didn't grow up in a border town or in a predominantly Mexican-American town, they probably weren't exposed to. So that's why I enjoyed covering those topics.
And I appreciated it as well, just because there were some topics that I did not even know, even living on the border, for most of my life. So yeah, they're great. I will say though, with every advantage comes disadvantages. So today we're actually going to talk about
Greg Abbott.
Yeah. About what?
I thought you were going to say that was a disadvantage of living here in Texas.
No, I was going to say that we're going to talk about how 5 young, brave kids tried to make a change to one such disadvantage by taking on the men, aka the government, specifically the United States Border Patrol. El Border Patrol.
Yeah, another disadvantage of living in the area.
Exactly. So Jose, get your pom-poms out, because we're going to cheer on the underdog, because this is our When an El Paso high school sued the Border Patrol episode.
Oh.
Ooh, yeah. This information comes from one of my favorite podcasts, Radio Lab. The episode, it's called Border Trilogy. There was 3 parts, obviously, hence in the name. But the information I took is from part 1, and it's called Hole in the Fence. I also got some information from a Los Angeles Times article, an El Paso Times article, actually a shit ton. So to save us time and get on with it, the links are in the show notes.
Show notes.
Show notes.
It's funny now when I listen to other podcasts and they say show notes and there isn't a voice that whispers show notes. Yeah. I almost feel disappointed.
I know. I've thought about that too. I'm like, they're missing out on a fun opportunity here. So for our super friends that are outside of El Paso and unfamiliar, according to the U.S. Census from the 2022 census, I should say, 82% of this city's population is Hispanic. Dude, 82%. Esa mi gente. Yeah. I often say, and of course joking, say that it's like being in Mexico, but you get to keep your rights, right?
Sure.
Well, sort of.
Yeah, I find a lot of those rights are being taken away little by little.
Oh, no.
Starting with reproductive rights, but...
Oh, dude, that's all over the place. Not even here. Yeah. So compare that to the U.S. as a whole. Hispanics, we make up 18.9% of the US versus our 82%. Like, that's pretty awesome, right?
Yeah.
And if we're being fully transparent, like you and I already know, there's a ton of undocumented Hispanics in Texas, Arizona, California, like pretty much everywhere. So I think we can safely bump that 18.9% up to 19%, you know?
Yeah, if not more.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. I'm trying to be conservative. All that to say, clearly El Paso is nothing like the US. And that's also why I question, why would anybody want to live anywhere else? Because this place is awesome. No, I'm kidding. Obviously, I did that, came back, and obviously realized what I missed. So it's okay.
I think we have to keep that on the DL though, because then we'll start getting too many people come over to this area.
Dude, for reals, right? It's going to be like the next Phoenix. But of course, yeah, I missed my family. I missed the good food, like we were talking about earlier. Dude, those enchiladas have a real strong pull. They do. Let's kick this off with a teacher's story. Shout out to teachers like your brother-in-law. Former history teacher Juan Seibert-Coronado. He taught at Bowie High School for 21 years. Also, crazy side note, he had never had one single Anglo student in 21 years. That's really crazy. But also at the same time, like, is it really crazy? Knowing our town? No, not really.
Yeah, knowing our demographics, it doesn't sound crazy.
Right, right. So one day there was going to be a debate that was scheduled in Juan's class. One of his kids that was going to debate, his name's Albert, he was really late to class, and not like 5-10 minutes. Like, we're talking 20 minutes late. Eventually, he was pulled into the class by campus security, which made Juan think, oh my gosh, he was smoking out or I don't know, right? Causing trouble, basically. But Albert had explained that he was at the handball court. And just so everybody knows, I think I should explain what handball is. It's almost like racquetball, but without the rackets. It's just hands. Google it if you want to. It's actually under American handball. Did you ever play that, by the way?
I was thinking about a different type of handball. So I'm glad that you explained what it was.
Hold on here. That sounds different. Yeah.
No, we used to play something called wall ball. I don't know if this is a real game or if it's just something that we invented.
Okay.
But from what I remember, you would throw the ball against the wall. And if you caught it, yeah, you got to throw it. But if you didn't, like if you missed or whatever, like grazed your hand or something, somebody could pick up the ball and then just peg you with it.
Oh, God.
And
Okay.
you had to run and touch the wall before you got pegged. If you got pegged before touching the wall, then we would do a firing squad. And that's where all the other players got turns just throwing the ball at you while you just stood against the wall. And I mean, there was nothing you could do. You know, you had to you had to stay there while everybody took turns firing at you with the ball.
Oh my God. You guys were like a private Christian place. Where's the mercy? What the hell? That's so funny. It does sound pretty exciting.
Yeah. And much like the Bible, there was very little mercy shown.
Yeah, exactly. Well, anyway, so Albert was playing handball and the bell rang to return to class because it was after lunch. And that's when 2 Border Patrol agents stopped him and asked him for his quote unquote papers, which, I mean, come on. What kind of papers do underage kids have? Like nothing, unless they have a driver's license. But even then, you know, it's still kind of rare. So the agents kept pushing and pushing their questions. Who are you? What's your name? Give us your ID. Just kind of like being jerks. Poor Albert handed them the school ID and they just swatted it away. And they were like, no, we want your state ID, which, I mean, kids don't really get state ID. I don't know. My daughter definitely didn't. I don't know if your nephew does, but.
No, I think my first state ID was my driver's license. And that was when I was 18.
Yeah, same. See, that's why it's so ridiculous that these Border Patrol agents were asking so vehemently for this type of information. And the teacher wasn't really trying to hear his excuse because he thought that they were lies, right? He's like, oh my God, like this is ridiculous. But then 3 or 4 other students in class jumped in the conversation by adding, no, this really does happen all the time. So Juan Seibert-Coronado was kind of in disbelief. So now he was a little bit curious, like, how widespread is this problem? And so he started asking around to other classes. And there were a ton of students that had experienced this too. So then he started sharing this with the staff. Guess what? Even the football coach, Benjamin Murillo, was also stopped by Border Patrol agents. Really upsetting. He said a gun was pointed to his head and 2 students were also in the car with him. And the agents, of course, were asking him his nationality, who he was, blah, blah, blah. And he was like, he said his name. He says, I'm the football coach for Bowie Bears. I'm taking these two students they're also football players. And thankfully, an assistant coach saw what was happening. So he drove over and he vouched for him. And the agents replied to the assistant coach that this is none of their business. Isn't that fucking frustrating to hear, dude?
That's super fucked up, but I totally believe it.
Oh, I know. It's so frustrating. And the worst part is the coach, Murillo, he had a polo shirt that said Bowie Bears football. What the fuck? Like, how are illegal immigrants going to find shit like that? You know what I mean? Anyway, it was really frustrating to hear. But similarly, a freshman, she was either 14 or 15, Nidia Rodriguez, she was walking home with some friends when a Border Patrol truck came speeding towards them. 2 agents jumped out, yelling at them, same thing. Who are you? Where are you from? Where are you going? Which sounds really scary for kids. I mean, I don't know if you can imagine what that must be like, just walking home, minding your own business, and all of a sudden these grown-ass adults coming towards you, you know?
I've had cops do that.
Ay, that's awful.
Yeah. I had one experience with the Border Patrol, but they weren't aggressive.
Oh.
I don't know if I told you one time, my buddy Josh and we were geocaching here in Sunland Park. And I guess like our activity seemed suspicious to like the Border Patrol.
Like, who are these nerds? Yeah.
That's exactly what happened. That was exactly what saved us because we were out there. And then the Border Patrol agent was like, what are you guys doing? It's like, oh, we're geocaching. She was like, what's that? So we explained what it was. And she was like, all right, guys, stand down. They're locals. They're just a bunch of nerds.
No.
And then we got her involved in helping us find like caches and stuff.
Oh, that's fun.
So she was actually really cool. Yeah. But I know Josh was worried because he's like, oh, fuck, dude, I don't have like none of my shit on me, you know? So. And
he normally shouldn't have to. I mean, that's the part that's weird, but I can understand why he got scared.
Yeah. He was a little bit worried. I mean, he's a citizen, but, he didn't have any paperwork or anything on him. So I was like, nah, don't worry. I don't think she'll do anything. Like, because we definitely don't look like we're migrants. We're out there with our cell phones and GPS and all this shit, so.
Yeah. I mean, I think as soon as you said the word geocaching, they're like, oh, let's wrap this up, guys. Get out of here. That's funny. Well, Ernesto Munoz also had a similar story where he was walking home with a friend and Border Patrol agents were once again being overly aggressive. But they were even going through his bag and they were like, what's in your bag? And I mean, they're books. Like, what else would be in here? So that's the part that's a little bit upsetting is they're just totally confused what's going on. And, they're still trying to comply. But sometimes they just, or not even sometimes, it seems like most of the time they were getting overly aggressive and to the point of this awful next story of her name is Naidan Susie Diaz. She was stopped. She answered all her questions in English, but the agent still knocked her down on the ground and kicked her about 20 times, leaving her bruised and, of course, completely humiliated. So why all of this at Bowie High School? Because it is as close as 50 feet away from the U.S.-Mexico border. Also, it's located in this rough area, Segundo Barrio, which is the 4th most poverty-stricken area in the United States. I didn't realize it was that poor, which is really shitty to admit.
Yeah, and what you were saying doesn't sound at all unusual from stories that I've heard from people that grew up there in Chihuahuita, which is what they would call Segundo Barrio. It was just pretty much the Border Patrol patrolling the streets. I mean, the same thing happens here in Sunland Park, too. The Border Patrol is just driving up and down, patrolling the streets. All you hear is that goddamn fucking helicopter 24/7. You hear their stupid drones. It's awful.
Yeah, I can see how that would be really, ugh. And it's just disheartening, too, after a while, So when the history teacher had gathered hundreds of stories, he knew that this was just a terrible abuse of power. And he was frankly shocked at how prevalent it was. And of course, as he started to teach certain parts of history, for example, in the 1930s, He was teaching about like Luisa Moreno, how she came from Guatemala, but she fought for garment workers in the 1930s. She fought for Louisiana cane workers, for Florida cigar rollers. And then, of course, later in the 1960s, when he talked about, or when he taught, I should say, about these incredibly brave leaders fighting for civil rights, wonderful leaders like Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, who said, it's freedom for everybody or it's freedom for nobody. I mean, these people were fighting for us too, all these other minorities. Cesar Chavez, Dolores Huerta, they were also fighting for just to be treated like everyone else, better wages. And finally, the students who used to take this harassment like, just a normal commonplace thing, you would hear how they finally started to get a little angry. And one of the times when they were talking about how like normal it was, you heard this one young guy and he said, oh, you got pulled over or you got stopped? And then the kid said, like jokingly, he's like, oh, you probably got stopped because of your haircut, which made me question, like, who goes to the barber and says, hey, can you make me look like an illegal alien? You know what I mean? But anyway, so it was really sad how commonplace it became, how they felt like nothing could be done. But then once they started learning about these amazing leaders, they started to get angry and they started to organize. This is probably a good time to take a quick commercial break. But when we come back, we'll get into the last and awesome part of this whole thing when they finally decide to sue.
India,
Kilo,
Uniform,
Zulu,
Oscar,
Iguzo,
I'm Peter,
and I'm Luca.
and here we go. Genuine, uncensored, and unscripted about pop culture, philosophy, politics, science, sports, and everything else beyond and under the sun.
So get your headsets ready for honest opinions, shower thoughts, barbershop talk, and city rumors, depending on what you seek.
But expect nothing less than a bohemian atmosphere and bond with our vibes, as we promise our pod won't cause any brain damage and that nobody will die from the cringe. And from time to time, we know to go
Overtime! Charted and trusted by thousands on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Amazon Music, and basically everywhere. Every Wednesday at 5 p.m. Central European Time. That's around 11 a.m. for Americans. And overtime every now and then out of nowhere.
I think that was all of our catchphrases. Now you can go and check our podcast yourself and witness that we don't just talk the talk, we walk the walk.
Iguzo!
Aussie Afterlife is a podcast that retells true paranormal stories and presents real audio evidence such as EVPs from my own paranormal investigations. My name is Sam, and I am the sole creator and host of this enthralling podcast. I have always had a deep fascination and love for the paranormal. So naturally, I thought, well, why not create a podcast? Like, I'm 35. I've got to make myself relevant in some way, right? I was always surprised at how many everyday people have had paranormal experiences. Like, we all can't be wrong or going mad. Well, we can, but no, we can't. I'm going to stick with you. Can't all be wrong. Otherwise, I'd have to come to the realization that I've wasted an enormous amount of time. Anyway, if you want to hear true paranormal stories and real ghostly voices, come join Aussie Afterlife. It's the most fun you'll have with your clothes on. Or you might not have clothes on. I wouldn't know either way. That adds a different layer of mystery again, doesn't it? See? It's exciting already. Come on. Press play. You know you want to.
And we're back.
We're back.
Did you do more geocaching?
I didn't know.
Aw, I'm sorry for you.
I used to really enjoy it. I don't know why I stopped doing it, but I kind of want to get back into it. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, maybe you can do that like after you meet with the whiskey club. Then that would be really funny to see how you guys navigate that. Those pedos, all a little drunk.
Maybe. Yeah, for sure we'll get arrested if we're out there in public intoxicated.
Oh, that's true. That's true. Never mind. Sorry. I was going to ask you, I had it in the script where when we would go on road trips, I recall you always joking about how the Border Patrol agents were going to stop you. And I was going to ask you if they had ever stopped you, but I guess you already answered my question. By the way, 3 years ago, exactly to the day, do you remember where we were?
Yeah, that's when we went to Dallas to go look at it was the Zack Snyder's Justice League costumes.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, where we had the Snoop wine and we had the body of Christ or whatever it was.
And we had the idea for this podcast too.
That's exactly it. That's right.
See, dangerous things happen when we have too much free time on our hands.
I know. Yeah. It was so fun though. So back to the story. The students were finally getting upset and they were like, okay, well, what can we really do about it, right? And just as a side note, let's just be very clear. We all know that illegal immigration is definitely an issue, but this is not, I repeat, not what this episode is about. It is really about minorities in poor areas being treated like second-class citizens. Tale as old as time, right? It's but I joke, but sadly, it's very serious.
Yeah. And even racial profiling too.
Oh, for sure. That still goes on 100%. So Juan, the teacher, knew that the harassment also had to stop and started to seriously contemplate as well what could be done. There was this organization, it's called MECHA, and it's MECHA, and it stands for Movimientos Estudiantil Chicano de Aztlán. It is a student Chicano civil rights group, which is actually for college students. But some of the Bowie students organized a big petition and they requested a local chapter there. Smart move. There's always strength in large numbers for sure. And because this was a collegiate group, they did ask the history teacher, Juan Seibert Coronado, to supervise the meetings, which he was totally cool with. There would be up to 40 to 50 students attending these weekly meetings. I can tell you right now, I cannot remember any student clubs that had that high participation. Did you have any? Well, at least outside of sports anyway.
No, I can't recall, but mainly I was involved in nerd stuff in high school, so there really weren't that many people that would attend.
I mean, even our chess club, I think we maybe had 14 students in our chess club, you know what I mean? So someone from the Border Rights Coalition came to one of the meetings and armed with one of the most beautiful weapons ever. Not to get all after school special with you, but it's knowledge for sure. She told them, know your rights as a citizen, and they're being violated. When these agents are going through your backpack, that's unreasonable search and seizure, which is your Fourth Amendment. And this goes for any law enforcement officer. So obviously this chick sounds like bien chingona, right? She sounds like a badass. And the other people were like, well, what about when they are just stopping us and asking us for ID and citizenship and all that shit, right? Pay attention. This is when watching TV pays off. A student who watched a lot of Law and Order suggested, don't we have the right to remain silent, like in the Miranda rights? I'm sure you and I are both very familiar with it. I mean, not because we've been arrested. I'm not trying to start any rumors, but because we've seen it in all these movies, right? And then also, I feel like that Fifth Amendment of, staying silent or whatever, you should really call it the Donald Trump. He invoked it 450 times in one single deposition.
I don't doubt it.
Yeah, that stand-up person right there.
Oh, that guy.
Yeah, that's exactly what some students ended up doing, was taking the Fifth. And as you would expect, the Border Patrol agents hated it. The most famous case was this one kid who was legally blind, walking home again with a friend. They were coming home from graduation rehearsal. Agents roll up, same bullshit. They are pushing them for their citizenship. And the guy who's legally blind was U.S. citizen. And they kept asking the same question. He answered it 2 or 3 more times. And finally, he was just let's just go. He tells his friend, which was obviously no bueno. And the agents grabbed the kid's arm and he pulled him in and he threatened to break it if he walked away. Obviously, he didn't break it. He just kind of slammed him against this fence there. And he wasn't hurt physically, but I mean, there's some PTSD that could definitely happen, I couldn't imagine being like slapped around in the face or whatever. Again, just egregious abuse of power.
Yeah, no, the Border Patrol has a long history of being overly aggressive and just being assholes in general. I don't know if you knew this, but back in the day when people would cross over the border, they would make them take off all of their clothes so they can do like a strip search. And this was like they would put you in a room. Everybody there that was there, they would all take off their clothes, men, women, and then they would spray them down with DDT so that way they wouldn't bring any lice into the country. Or at least that was their excuse for doing that.
And I think that was even during the people that were coming over like legally. That's the most humiliating part. It's really sad.
Yeah, there were people at the bridge. They were coming over legally and they were still doing that.
Yeah, I did know about that. That was really sad. The Border Patrol Sector Chief, Dale Musegades, came to Bowie to talk to some of the students. Of course, it was behind closed doors. He was basically trying to patch up things that were going wrong. Now, Good Morning America was here. Like, it was getting national news, but no one else was able to go in. But someone was able to record it. And you can hear where he's like explaining how there's holes in the fence and illegals come through it, which is the fence that's right there on like close to Bowie. And that's why his people have to come, to the campus and stuff like that. But the kids were speaking up and you can hear where, they were saying, but you're backing us into these spaces. And, Musegades was saying, we patch up the holes every day, but there's no use. They keep just cutting it. And it's like a daily thing. And one kid kind of mic drops it with like, yeah, like we get it. You have to do your job, but not at the sacrifice of our rights. What a lovely, like, just hit the nail on the head right there. Suffice to say that the meeting, valió papas. Like, it did not go very well. And, oh, yeah, by the way, did you know that the border chain link fence, it's called the tortilla curtain? Folks, I wish that was a joke. It's really called the tortilla curtain. Yeah.
It's so fucked up.
It is very fucked up. So anyway, the football coach and some other students, this is when they were like, let's sue the Border Patrol. Let's take on this Goliath, the man. And I just am curious, if you were like any of these adults, do you think suing the government would feel like a legit option to you?
No, I imagine a lot of people are probably scared. I would be scared too.
Yes, 100%. I don't even think that would have come in my purview. It would feel so out of reach.
The government can make people disappear, so I definitely would not want to be one of those people that disappear.
I agree. So they speed dialed this guy, Albert Armendariz Jr., and he's an El Paso civil rights attorney. Do you want to play the clip for me here?
Said, we're getting ready to sue the Border Patrol. Will you be our local counsel? And I said, not only yes, but hell yes.
Dude, I already love him. I was like, okay, it takes a big pair, and I love how excited and like down he was. So students, the secretary, the football coach, alumni, they were all the plaintiffs. And it was October 23rd, 1992, when the trial began. You were what, like 7th grade?
Yeah, around there, 7th.
So do you remember when Crisscross was making you jump, or House of Pain was making you jump around? There was a lot of jumping going on back then.
Yep.
What was little 7th grade Jose like back then? A ver, dinos.
Well, I was definitely very much into Crisscross. House of Pain, not as much, but I did like Crisscross a lot. Very much into like all the gangster rap and all that shit that was going on at the time.
Oh, cool. Okay. I can't tell if you're being sarcastic, but yeah.
No.
Oh, okay, good. I liked it too.
I did love stuff like Metallica and Slayer and all that shit also, but I think at that time, just the kids that were going to school with me, they were very much into gangster rap, so I was into it too.
Oh, cool. Yeah, I was in jazz band in 1992. It was fun, but I was into like everything of everything. In fact, I think 6th or 7th grade was when I became friends with friend of the show, Josh El Josue. Yeah. Anyway, but I don't remember any of this shit going on. Do you remember this?
No, I think I was too young to really be paying attention to that type of stuff. I think I got most of my news at that time from MTV, so unless it was being covered there, I don't think I knew too much about it.
Yeah. Well, during all the youthful fun we were having, this is when the trial began, and apparently the courtroom was quite a sight. Half of the Border Patrol agents, they were all in their green uniforms, and the other half were these courageous kids dressed to the nines. Thanks to episode 64, acronyms and phrases. Now we know that nines refers to the 9 yards of fabric that it takes to make a suit. Go check it out. It's a cool one. Anyway, they were all taking the stand in all senses of the word. Dale Musegades also testified, and his defense was basically that the U.S. Code of Federal Regulations, Section 1357, under powers of immigration officers, have the power to question anyone believed to be an alien within, quote, reasonable distance from the border. I'm going to let you guess what you think reasonable is.
100 miles.
It is 100 miles.
That's why there's that Border Patrol station. I think it's outside of Las Cruces when you're going towards Albuquerque.
Oh, right.
Remember, I think one of the times we went to, I don't know if it was to Albuquerque or to Phoenix, I told you better drive because if I drive, we're going to get pulled over and they're going to bring in their fucking dogs and all this shit and take out the seats and all that. I said, but if you drive, you can pass for white. So they're not going to say anything. And did they stop us? Of course not.
They sure did not. Yeah, that's so true. That is so true. Yeah, 100 miles is, I mean, that's a really far distance. But, it's also 160 kilometers for our super friends outside of the U.S., by the way. So the civil rights attorney rebutted with, look, bottom line here is no matter what these federal regulations say, you cannot violate someone's Fourth Amendment by stopping students, going through their property. Like, you have to have a valid, legitimate reason to do that. All in all, do you want to know how the judge ruled?
I'm pretty sure they ruled with the Border Patrol. They said that it was the Border Patrol's right to be assholes.
Believe it or not, Bowie Bears won.
Really? Then why are the Border Patrol still fucking assholes?
I know, surprisingly. Well, no, okay, so the U.S. District Judge Lucius D. Bunton issued a stunning injunction, quote, Border Patrol cannot stop and question individual rights or an individual's right to remain in the U.S. unless the agent has reasonable suspicion based on articulable facts involving more than the appearance of an individual. So basically them saying, like, you can't stop them just because of their looks. Like, you can't be mamones anymore, basically, is what they were trying to tell them.
Shit, here, the Border Patrol pulls over people in cars like they're fucking cops.
Oh, I know. So the good thing, at least, is it did change everything for Bowie students. The principal was thrilled to report that the relationship between the Border Patrol agents had completely improved. Agents weren't going on the campus anymore. And if they did have to, they would get a phone call beforehand to let them know, hey, here's your common courtesy call to let you know we're going to have to be there for these hours. This is what's going on, which I think is pretty damn wonderful. I don't know. Give me your thoughts.
I think it's a start. I don't know if when, what the fuck was the name of that stupid thing? When the Patriot Act got put in, if a lot of those things were taken off, because I don't see them being any nicer or gentler. And I think that a lot of those protections that people had were done away with the Patriot Act.
Yep. And maybe it was just during that time, because the El Paso Times articles where he did say, like, things are like fabulous now or whatever. And who knows? It could have just been for a time. Anybody listening that is going to Bowie or works at Bowie, if you know any different, for sure, definitely let us know. I'd love to know if things are still as good as he reported.
Yeah, hopefully they are, especially for the sake of the students and the staff that works there.
Yeah, I mean, it took a lot of courage for kids to be like, yeah, let's take on the government, and then to actually do it and get on, on the stand. And it's rough when attorneys are like grilling you. I think it's amazing. Even if they would have lost, like, just standing up to them, I think would have been still just as admirable, for sure.
Yeah, definitely.
How did you find this story today? Give me your highlights or what?
No, it's very interesting. Personally, I feel like more could be done, for them to, I guess, humanize the people that they pull over instead of treating them like they're fucking like criminals or something, Because all it is, a lot of times, it's racial profiling. Again, I don't know if a lot of those wins that they had were rescinded when the Patriot Act came into effect. But yeah, that is really remarkable. It's a remarkable story that they went against the government and they won.
Yeah, no, I agree. Which I think if they were to do it again, if another group would do it again, knowing that another small group had won before, I think also gives people a little bit of hope. Like, hey, they did it. And you know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure.
I was fascinated. I was like, what? One of my favorite podcasts came to El Paso. It was fascinating. I had to share it for sure. But before we go, we have to shout out our super homies, our wonderful Patreons, Sophia, Natasha, Eric, Angie, Eli, Madtown Charity, Katya, and our latest, SME Victor. Thank you guys so much. If you want to join, please go to patreon.com/technically a conversation. It's only $2 a month. You get the episodes a week early, ad-free, without all those annoying ads. I'm just kidding. And then we get to send you some kick-ass stickers. Like, how cool is all of that? Congratulations, lovelies. You have done it again, folks. You've learned along with us when high school students took a stand against the U.S. Border Patrol and brought on real change, if only for a little bit. We hope you've been entertained by our chat and invite you to join us again next week. If you're enjoying the show, please leave us a review and tell a friend. Don't forget to subscribe wherever you're listening to this podcast.
Yeah.
Follow us on all the socials at GreetingsTAC. Email us at greetingstac@gmail.com or leave us a voicemail at 915-317-6669 if you have a story to share with us. Any story about how you took your own stand
Against the government.
That's right. I can't take it, Ruka. I'm just kidding.
Now, maybe we could save this for the Patreon episode. But there was also another El Pasoan that took on the government and won.
Oh, this is exciting. Or do you want to make this a full-blown episode?
I don't know all the details. And maybe our super friend Cesar can write in and let us know, because it was actually his grandfather.
Cesar, tell us.
Yeah, he took on the IRS and he won.
The IRS? Wow. I definitely want to hear the story about that.
Yeah, he was kind of a local celebrity for a while because he was also like on Good Morning El Paso, and he was coming out on the news, on the national news.
Wow, that's so cool.
I don't know all the details, but yeah, maybe he can write in, and I don't know if he still listens to the show, but maybe he can write in and fill us in on some of the details on that.
Yeah, for sure. I would love to know. Not that it's completely related, but somewhat. I mean, it's still law enforcement being assholes. I was telling my dad about this story because he always asks about what the episodes are going to be about. And I was telling him the story and he was like, oh man, he's like, when was this? I would have loved to have been part of the lawsuit. And at that time he was living in Cairo, Egypt. But anyway, he was saying that when my parents first got married, they were living in Juarez, which is in Mexico, and for our super friends. And when he would come over to work, they were like the ICE agents, right? The customs agents. They would tell him like, oh, all right, pimp, you're done with the putas today. Or like just basically saying that he was coming back from Juarez just because, he was out whoring around, which is really shitty. And my dad was just like, whatever. Of course, he's not going to get into an argument because he knows better. But at the same time, like, nobody needs that bullshit. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's super fucked up. Even just to be joking around, that shouldn't be something you joke around with.
Yeah, that's not funny. Like, to say you look like someone who's all mixed in with a horse. I don't know. Anyway, well, I appreciate you telling me about that. Hopefully Caesar writes in because I'm very curious about that. That would be cool.
Yeah, he's written in before. He wrote us to let us know when I was calling it Fredericksburg, Maryland. He was the one that wrote us to let us know it was just Frederick, Maryland.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. You're like, well, it's because I moved you.
But yeah, I'll hopefully I'll send him a message and maybe he can write in and let us know a little bit about that.
Yeah.
But it's funny because I was listening to this other podcast and they were talking about all the stuff that's going on with the protesters. And they were saying that the peaceful group of protesters that are there in Colombia, that there was like this pro-Zionist organization that came in and they started being really abusive towards the pro-Palestine protesters that were there. And he said the cops showed up and the cops did nothing at all.
Oh my God. Sadly, why am I... It no longer shocks me. Isn't that sad?
And they were saying that if your values align with the cops' values, you're probably on the wrong side of history, you know, just going back and looking at history.
Yeah, 100%.
If your values align with the cops, you're probably on the wrong side of history. If you're on the fence, like where do the cops stand on this? Yeah, I probably shouldn't side with them.
Yeah, that's a good litmus test of like where you should stand for sure. That's funny. Oh my gosh. It's terrible.
Yeah, it's really bad. And there was like this one guy that came on that was saying, yeah, they're being violent. They're bringing in these kryptonite locks with these thick chains and all this stuff. I guess they were trying to say that they were using them as weapons or something.
Okay.
And there was this girl that went to Columbia University. She was being interviewed for a podcast. And she was saying, you know, that's the exact same lock that Columbia University is trying to sell to the students there, like as a bike lock. It's still on the fucking website, you know? Yeah, these people are going to have that fucking lock because they're peddling. Columbia University is peddling that lock on their students. There's going to be many of those locks that you're going to find there.
Right. Yeah. You're like, this is at their own hand. Like, what's the problem then? Wow, that's funny.
Yeah, but the guy that was being, I forgot who it was, but it was some guy was being interviewed on the news. I think he was a police chief or something. He was saying, yeah, you know, they're bringing these weapons in, they're trying to be violent. This whole time, those people have been peaceful. Now, there have been people that are not in the university that have been outside of the university. They have been anti-Semitic and they've been jerks. I mean, there's always going to be people that are going to look for an opportunity to be jerks. But the actual students that are there have all been peaceful.
Yeah. I really like the fact that people are trying to do these peaceful protests. But as soon as you drop in this, let's call them what they are, this gang of people, which is like the police, and then they're acting all aggressive, and then they have guns with them. I mean, of course it's going to escalate situation. You know what I mean? Like I don't know.
Yeah. All the times that they have gotten violent is when the police show up with fucking pepper spray and tasers and start pepper spraying and tasing people. That's the only times that it's gotten aggressive because it was police provoked aggression.
For sure. Yeah. And that's the way it is in most of the freaking protests, you know, well, except for the riots, but the riots are very different. I'm just talking about like protests. Yeah. Yeah. It's rough.
So I guess we'll end this part of our Patreon episode here.
Yeah. Sorry, guys. Not to end on a rough note.
On next week's episode of Technically a Conversation. On August 19th, 1930, a young schoolboy from Helsinki, Finland, stopped by the Tatarisu freshwater spring to get a drink of water on his way home from school. He cupped his hand to bring some water to his lips when he noticed something that would forever keep him from drinking water from that spring again. A severed hand was floating in the water. On September 18th, 1931, a chauffeur was on his break when he decided to go to the spring to freshen up. As he reached the spring, he discovered a human thumb pointing at him. The police were called and they carried out a search, resulting in 8 hands, 9 feet, a woman's head, a patch of hair, and 12 fingers. The findings reached the news and panic struck the residents of Helsinki. All anyone could talk about was the human limbs found in Tatarisu Springs, who the victims were, and who the responsible person or group of people were. Was it a serial killer, the Freemasons, or maybe a satanic cult? New episodes drop Monday. Make sure to subscribe so you never miss a show.